So, some of you might remember back to last week, I uploaded a video called Ex-President vs Grinder. Microphone, please. And in that video, I discussed not just the Ex-President and Grinder perk decks, but all of the perk decks. I then only went on to talk about Ex-President Grinder at the end, and the time that I talked about the Ex-President for was nothing compared to Grinder. So, I'm going to rework that video into two different videos, and the way I'm going to be doing that is this video is going to look at just Grinder and Ex-President. We're going to look at each perk deck in detail, and then I'm going to show you some gameplay with those perk decks. And then next video we're going to look at all the different perk decks apart from Grinder and Ex-President, and we're going to discuss which ones are best for which builds, which means I'm going to have to go onto Payday 2 skills and get myself some builds set up. I will leave those builds down in the description. Now, I'm probably going to leave the build that I'm running in this video in the description as well, because I tend to run different builds. These are not the weapons I'm going to be running. This is just Payday the Heisty, you know. I've got an Amcar, and I've got a B9S. It's just, I felt like it, alright? But what I'm going to be doing in this video is I'm going to discuss what Grinder does better over Ex-President, what Ex-President does better over Grinder, and how you should use each deck. And this is going to be done with a system in which I talk about Grinder, I present your screen with pros and cons on it, and then I talk about the Ex-President and I present you with a screen with pros and cons on it. And then I'm going to do the pros and cons of each perk decks compared. So, if we take a look at our perk decks, we start off with Grinder. Now, the skills that I'm going to be ignoring in each deck are going to be Helmet Popping, Blending In, Walk-in Closet, Fast and Furious, and that's it. All the other skills that we should look at. Now, as we look at Grinder, everything Grinder looks the same, and that's because it is. Basically, each level of Grinder just gives you more of the one skill. So we start off with this. Histamine, I think that's pronounced. Damaging an enemy heals 1 life point every 0.5 seconds for 3 seconds. This effect stacks, but cannot occur more than once every 1.5 seconds while wearing a 2-piece suit or lightweight ballistic vest. So, every time you damage an enemy, you get 1 life point every 0.5 seconds for 3 seconds. So if you damage an enemy, no matter how much, you will regenerate 6 health points. That doesn't seem like a lot, and it isn't to start off with. I would not recommend using this deck until you've got it completely maxed out, because it becomes so hard to use at lower levels. Next skill, after Helmet Popping, is Adrenaline. Damage an enemy now heals 2 life points every 0.5 seconds for 3 seconds. So you're doubling the amount of damage that you're doing to an enemy. No, doubling the amount of health that you get back from doing damage to an enemy. And, as a bonus, you get an extra 20% health. Now, this is better in certain cases, but it's also worse, because it means that you have to regenerate more health, but it means you can take more damage if you're wearing a 2-piece suit. Ignoring Blending In, we have Endorphins. Damaging an enemy now heals 3 life points every 0.5 seconds for 3 seconds. Increases your chance to pierce enemy armor by 10%. Now, I quite like to use this perk deck with silenced weapons on a silenced loud build. And that's because with silenced weapons in loud, there are certain skills that you can get that increase armor penetration and damage with silenced weapons. And this perk deck goes very well with this because you get a lot of armor penetration. You can body shot tans from medium range and you're guaranteed kills. After that we have Dopamine. Damage an enemy now heals 4 life points every 0.5 seconds for 3 seconds. And you gain an extra 20% health. So we have gained an extra 40% health so far. And last skill in the deck that we're going to look at is Euphoria. Damage an enemy now heals 4 life points every 0.5 seconds for 4 seconds instead of the standard 3 seconds. And you get an extra 20% to pierce enemy armor by 20%. So, we get a 30% increased chance to pierce enemy armour. We get an extra 40% health. And for now, damaging an enemy now heals 4 life points every 0.5 seconds for 4 seconds. Meaning we get 8 life points a second, or, if you prefer, 32 life points for every single time you hit an enemy. Now, it's not mentioned here, and I don't think it is a thing, but before a nerf update thing, I'm not sure. I think if you were hit during the process of regenerating their health, the effect was cancelled. And that seems fair, but if they could bring that back and maybe just increase the damage skills, it would encourage players, you know, run out, get a couple of shots to regenerate some health, and get back into cover again. So more of a tactical sort of playing style. Now if we look at the Ex-President perk deck, it's a very similar deck, you know. We have the same helmet popping skills, so we're going to ignore those. But while your armour is up, you will store 4 health for every one enemy you or your crew kills. And when your armour is completely depleted and then starts to regenerate, you will gain that health that has been stored. And it's the same amount. Now, the maximum amount of stored health depends on your equipped armour. So in other words, if you're running 2-piece suit, you're going to be able to store a lot of health. If you're running ICTV, you're only going to be able to store a minimum amount of health, because you're running heavy armour. So, if we ignore that skill and move on to the next one, increase the amount of health stored from kills by 4, so we now get 5, and we gain an extra 10% health. Now, something to mention, I'm sorry about the varying noise quality on the microphone, it's just the fact that for some reason the little pivot that it's mounted on my headset is struggling to keep the microphone in one place, so I'm having to hold it. So we also gain another 10% health. This also means that with Grinder you are doing the damage. You cannot have your crew going around shooting people so you can regenerate health. With this, every enemy your crew kills, you get the opportunity to store some health up, which is a nice idea actually. I do quite like the sound of it. But moving on to the next skill. Oh, so we've had Point Break, we've had Emerging Force, and we are now on Life of Ice. Increases the maximum health that can be stored by 50%, and you gain an extra 10%. And what's better, you gain an extra dodge chance. Dodge is something that Grinder does not offer, and that's a trade-off for the perk deck. If you're going to be using Grinder, you can't be using dodge. No, you're not going to be dodging. It's like Crook. With Crook, you're sacrificing dodge for health and armour. Actually, no, that's what it used to be. It's now, with Crook, you get a slight dodge chance, so you can kind of dodge. But unfortunately, what they've done with Crook is, instead of making it so you can just walk around like snipers just missing you, it's now that you just gain more armour. And against snipers that's useless, because snipers just penetrate straight through armour. So you gain an extra 50% to the maximum health that can be stored. Now this means that you have a certain amount of health that can be stored, and on top of that you gain another half of that. So say the health that could be stored was a quarter of your health, you can now store, if I work this out right, I think that is 3/8 of your health. Yeah, 3/8 of your health can now be stored. So, moving on. Awakening Earth. Increase the amount of health stored from kills by 4. So you can now store 9 health per kill. And you gain an extra 20% health. Nothing special about that. And the last skill, the Perfect Line. Killing an enemy speeds up armor recovery time depending on how much armor you have. The more armor, the less recovery speed gained per kill. Armor recovery speed is reset whenever your armor recovers. So basically, with this perk deck, you are gaining health that you can regenerate when your armor is depleted, and you gain extra armor regeneration speed. So this is more of a run around, get kills, go into cover, and if you do get hit, there's a little boost. But you are going to be using medic bags and first aid kits a lot more often with this build than you would with Grinder. Grinder is a run and gun build. You're supposed to run around just doing damage, regenerating health. You're basically the front line of your team. With this, You're sort of the middleman, almost, you could call it. So I will now jump into some games and show you some gameplay with these perk decks. I will try to show off both my loud builds and what the silence weapons can do, and I'll see you in a minute. So we find ourselves on a first world bank. Now something to note with all of the heists for this is I did all of them on overkill. I was wearing lightweight ballistic on all of them, and the only changes I made were weapons, perk decks, builds and heists. Everything else stayed the same. I didn't touch everything else. Something to note is that we had only just gone loud. We had stealthed up until we'd got the gate open on this, and then we decided to go loud. So you don't actually get to see Grinder working properly. I mean, it did take some damage there, so when, as you can see, by getting that melee hit in, the damage that I'd taken was immediately regenerated by the damage from the melee hit. Now, you don't get that with ex-president. As you'll see, you can lose large chunks of your health, and you have to wait for your armor to regenerate, so you can't be taking damage if you want your health to regenerate. But focusing on Grinder for the minute, as I said, I have two Payday 2 skills links in the description. The first one is for this perk deck, the Grinder deck, and that has my build, my weapons, all the mods I add, my infamy trees and everything. If you aren't infamy, or if you haven't unlocked all of the infamy skills yet, I think I was just changing something there. If you haven't got all of the infamy skills yet, things like the first 5 infamy skills that would have been infamy, no. Back when only infamy 5 was a thing, every infamy you got reduced the cost for skill trees. And basically, I'm using that to reduce the cost of skill trees once again, you know. It's not hard. Oh, and there's a cloaker that I thought I could kill and miss because he teleported. Oh, and I'm up. So, actually, this is a good example. I've now lost half of my health from the cloaker down in me. Now, I'll just go back to the builds quickly. Something to note is the fact that, oh, nice headshot, and as you can see, just quickly, that health regen just kicking in right away there. I cannot get out of a Microsoft jacket. I seriously can't. I was dying. It's just like I've had it installed for like a year and I still can't get over it. It's insane. But nevertheless, I eventually had to host 2 contracts because waiting in pub lobbies on Overkill for people to start heist is like watching paint dry or watching grass grow. It's painful because people just sit there in their inventory AFK. It just takes the mick. But back to the deck. As you can see, in about a minute or 2 minutes from killing enemies alone, I have regained all of my health on full health. Now, when it comes to looking at the ex-president deck, this is going to be the thing. You won't be able to see the health regen bar because it's hidden by my Hox HUD. I'm running Poco HUD and Hox HUD if you didn't realise. But it's hidden by my Hox HUD. But you don't actually need to see that. All you need to see is the actual regen itself. When my armour drops and all of a sudden I have a chunk of my health back. Now, I didn't actually get a chance to demonstrate it in this clip, but one thing Grinder is good for is if you're low health, you can walk up to a bulldozer and even damaging his faceplate is going to do vast amounts of healing. Seriously. Ex-president can't do that because you have to hide. But Grinder, you can just walk up to someone, and Grinder is best used with a full auto weapons. It doesn't really work well with shotguns, and I found that out that ex-president doesn't really work well at taking out bulldozers at any range. So I didn't get down a single time during this heist, but well, actually, no, apart from the cloakers, I didn't get down a single time, I don't think. But with ex-president, I did go down once to a bulldozer, I think. But Grinder, I'm not sure actually if it works with civs, really have no idea. But the Bronco is a fantastic weapon because all you have to do is just one-shot people. It's brilliant. Full auto weapons work as well, but bearing in mind, once you've done damage, you can... That damage, I think the damage, if you do like 2 sets of damage individually, but within the time limit for your regen, I think it stacks and doubles. I'm not sure. If it doesn't, that's the thing that full auto weapons aren't so good for. You know, sniper rifles work relatively well with Grinder, and so do pistols. I chose to run the Bronco just because of the damage output and the fact that I was just no-scope headshotting for days. Because I am MLG. But there's not a lot I can really show you after this. So, enough waffling about Grinder. And on to... Actually, no, and not enough waffling about Grinder. I will be back in a minute with a fancy pros and cons table. So, as we can see by this very, very, very basic table, you could call it, we have some pros and cons of using Grinder. So, we'll start off with the pros. As we've seen, damage equals health. It's a really simple principle. You run around, you shoot people, you get health back. You don't even have to kill them. And that's something that actually I'm going to just go on from that. On Death Wish, that is fantastic, because if you're poking your head around a corner and you're getting shot at a lot and you haven't got the time to kill people, you can just do a tiny little bit of damage, hide, get some health back, and just keep doing that until you have enough health to move out. Like I say, it works well on all difficulties. You can use this on normal and... Well, why would you want to use it on normal, actually? That's just... Die. Please. If you use Grinder on normal, you should not be a part of the human race, alright? But it does work well on difficulties from very hard up to Death Wish. I haven't tried it much on Death Wish. I do kind of prefer Ex-President to Death Wish, but Grinder works perfectly well on Overkill, and I have had no problem with it whatsoever. And as a bonus, you get the extra armor penetration. You're going to have no problem walking up to Tans and heavily armored units and just eating through them without having to aim for headshots. And that's fantastic with shotguns, because I mean a shotgun is pretty much a guaranteed headshot on a Tan anyway. But if for some reason you do miss and get a body shot, instead of just taking loads of stun damage or just half of their health, you could potentially just kill them in 1 or 2 shots. You know, I don't know of any shotguns that will kill in 1 shot, do 200 damage, but oh well. But moving on to the cons, you have very little healing when the perk deck is not leveled up. If you only have the first 3 perks, the actual first 3 cards, you're virtually going to be getting no healing out of this. It's just impossible to survive. That's like the only time when it is acceptable to use it on normal. But I just want to point this out now. If you're buying the Sockole pack for Grinder, make sure you have a backup perk deck before you go onto this. If you're using Muscle, Crew Chief, whatever, keep using it until Grinder is most of the way leveled up, if that makes sense. Until you've got like 1 or 2 cards left, keep using your current perk deck. Don't touch Grinder until it's nearly done. And it only works with 2 armors, lightweight ballistic vest and the 2-piece suit, which I suppose is fair. I mean, that's always been a thing with Grinder. But if you were planning on getting it and using it with, I don't know, heavier armors like the flak jacket and ICTV, and just to be able to run around being pretty much invincible because of your armor, and to be able to regenerate health, it's not going to happen. Armor is for people who don't want to lose health. It's one of those things. I prefer having lightweight armor because I can run around quickly. You know, I can dodge, I can get past people. Heavier armor means you're more of a target for melee attacks, which I really that's one thing that really annoys me. A melee attack can ruin your armor completely, even when you're wearing heavy armor. So having Grinder to be able to just kill someone and be able to get health back if you've lost health, it's just fantastic. But moving on to the Ex-President, we will look at some gameplay of that now. So, looking at a golden grin now. Sorry for the slightly laggy frame rate, that's just what massive maps do to my PC. But, looking at Ex-President now. Once again, I will list the build and the weapon mods and everything in the description. But nothing has changed. We are running the same armour and we're on the same difficulty. The only things that have changed are the build, so I can make the most out of the perk deck, like I did on Thingy, First World Bank, and it'll be easy. And this geezer's already mucked up the code. I forgot about this. He went and typed a 7 in. Because he thought it like, oh my god, the keypad bugged out. Oh yeah, keypad glitch. Oh. Anyway, enough about this. As you can see, I have full health at the minute, and if you pay attention, and you've got flipping, I don't know how good your eyesight has to be. If you look at the 3 in the middle of my health that you get from Hoxhud, and you look at the sprint ring that surrounds that, sometimes when I'm sprinting that will disappear. You will be able to see the slight health regen. Oh, he says go ahead, and I get it first time. Oh yeah, keypad glitch did it, mate. But as we can see, I haven't actually seen a lot of action yet. It's more just planting the C4 at the minute. But when it all starts getting slightly hairy with lots of police and everything, I don't know if we're going to get to the section with the bulldozer yet. But I don't understand why the Raven sounds silenced when it's unsuppressed. That's never made sense to me. It just sounds the same in my mind. But you know, I don't know if you can quite see that yet. I'm actually just going to full screen it. If you look very carefully, it's very faint. You can just sort of see the sprint line is slightly thicker around a certain area, and that's how much health I've regenerated. So, when my armor drops, for instance, let's have a look. Now, as you can see, my health was dropped by half and instantly regenerated due to that, you know, the amount of kills. And, as mentioned before, you don't even have to get kills for this perk to take effect. It can all be done with, you know, different people's getting kills. Not the health, as you will see, there is a little tiny sort of very lightly shaded green, and that's how far I can regenerate my health up to. So, as you can see, I now have the maximum amount of health that can be stored with the lightweight ballistic vest. I think with 2-piece suit it's about 3/4 on there, so it'd only be a bit more. But just waiting for the next salt to build up. That was a good example of how Ex-President works. Now, if I actually no, I won't bother finding it. You know, I'm not sure whether it works, but I did take a hostage, a converted. I think if converteds get kills, they will contribute towards your health, which is pretty interesting. Actually, that's a pretty good concept, because now that you can have up to 8 converteds at a time. You've got 8 converteds and your team, so that's 12 people effectively, all getting kills. And that can prove for a pretty interesting regen experience, if you like. Now, due to the fact that this very high-tech rendering software called Movie Maker doesn't display anything in the high enough resolution, for instance, right now I can barely make out anything on the screen. It's all blurred to hell and back, and it's disgusting, really. But nevertheless, I'm actually just going to pause for the minute, and I'm just going to see if I can find a section with a bulldozer that I was talking about. So bear with me. So I found the clip that I was looking for, and this is an example of where Grinder would beat Ex-President easily. It might just be down to my choice of weapons, but Raven Shotgun versus Black Dozer, as you can see, way too many headshots are being landed there. And one more shot and I would have got him. But, due to the fact that I didn't let my armor regen, I didn't get the kill. So if I'd have got the kill and my armour had regened, I would have got a hell of a lot of health back. But that is just one example of where ex-president would be beaten by Grinder. So back to another fancy table now, and I will demonstrate, I will explain the pros and cons of ex-president, and then to finish off the video, we will look at one more table, or some columns, and we will have a look at the different aspects of each perk deck and why they are more suited to different roles, I should say. See you in a minute. So for one of the last two sections of this video, we're going to look at our last table, which is our ex-president pros and cons. Starting off with the pros once again, kills are equal to health basically, and that's about as true as it gets. Every time you get a kill, you build up some stored health. Moving on. Health is restored instantly. Now, what I mean by this is, when your armour depletes and regenerates, it's not a slow drip feed sort of thing of health. It's one big blast of health. It's just, you go from half health to full health instantly. It's basically, it's medbag speed, pretty much. Teammates can do the work for you, you know. You don't actually have to be going around getting kills. You could have no ammo left and not be able to pick up any ammo, and if you're low health, all you have to do is get your armour completely depleted, run inside again, and you've got full health. And something that it definitely beats over Grinder, it's free. It's not part of a DLC. It comes with the Bodhi, and it's not even part of the what's it called? I've forgotten the name of it now. Point Break Heists. Bodhi's a character that comes with the stock game, so that's a definite pro. Health is only restored when armour regens. Cons now. That's the thing. With Grinder, your health is constantly restoring, no matter the state of your armour. With this, your armour has to fully deplete and then regenerate for you to be able to get your health. And it's pretty much useless with heavy armour types. If you want to be running this with ICTV, don't bother. Run Crew Chief or Muscle, or whatever other heavy armour perk decks there are. Because, quite frankly, the amount of health that you regain from heavy armour is minimal. It makes no difference whatsoever. So, keep on going with 2-piece suit and lightweight ballistic with this. So, for the last section of the video, we're going to take a look at the two perk decks side by side, and which one I think is the best, and why. See you in a minute. So, now the all-important question. Which is better? Grinder or ex-president? Well, you know, like I say many times before, it's personal preference. There is no definitive better perk deck over the two. Same thing goes for all the perk decks. They're all equally as good, unless we're talking about Rogue. Rogue is pretty useless now, as is Crook. They both got nerfed. But as we can see from this picture I've made, or this table, Grinder, the original health regen deck, and it was new thing. Nobody had ever seen this before, and it is still as OP as the day it was released. Overkill can't seem to nerf the thing without making it better. They've tried numerous times, and they've just failed miserably. It's backfired on them, and I think it's going to remain the go-to health deck until people stop playing Payday 2, or people just can't be asked to buy the Sokol character pack, at which point ex-president takes over, as it's the bootleg version of Grinder. It's free, and it's a nice idea. It's well made, it's sorta, and it works with all armour types. But thing is, like I say, I wouldn't touch it with a very long stick. I wouldn't go near it if I was wearing anything more than a lightweight ballistic, because the health that you get out of it depends on what armour you're wearing, and like I said before, with heavy armour types, that's nothing. It's useless. So, bringing it all into a conclusion, which perk deck would I recommend? Well, I'm going to say Grinder. It's my favourite perk deck for Loud. It has been since I got it maxed out. It has been since I started using it. Ex-President's good. It's just that I can't get quite used to using it. For me, it's like taking the jump from using Rogue and 2-piece suit to Muscle and ICTV. There's such a big difference between the two and the way that they play. I mean, Grinder is as OP. The only thing I can really compare it to as being OP is Inspire before it was nerfed in Update 100, before they added the cooldown. Ex-President is probably the equivalent of, I don't know, the Saw. You know, the fact that you had to unlock it, but now it's default. You know, I think of Grinder as being the Saw before. You had to go out and unlock it, buy the DLC, but now Ex-President's here. You've got one to use, but in effect, Grinder is still the better perk deck because of how it regenerates your health. I don't like having to sit around and wait for my armor to deplete and then regen to be able to get my health back. I mean, the idea of teammates getting kills is cool, but if I can just do damage and get health, I'm fine. But I hope you enjoyed this video. A lot of work's gone into it. I've been sat here for about 4 hours now rendering this. But with that said, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Ta-ra.